Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano. This is your antidote to popular talk radio. Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government now before this bureaucratic, oversized and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our liberty, and our rights. To do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Let me repeat that. We need to be revolutionaries in thought and dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back in every way, folks. And this program is just about that. Well, this week can be characterized as one in which we reflect very, very much on our society as a whole. The tragedy in Newtown. Cannot be Newtown, I'm sorry. I just got correct. Newtown, I'm sorry. Cannot be overemphasized. I mean, it's a tragedy beyond comprehension. I want to make something very clear. I come across like this hard-nosed, unfeeling, inflexible person that you really don't ever want to meet on the street. Actually, I'm a weenie. I'm not kidding you. You have no idea I'm a weenie. Let me give you an example. 6 months ago, a cat that we had at home that we adopted from a woman who had nursed the cat for a couple of years, was deathly ill, put all sorts of money, a couple of $1,000s into the cat, couldn't do it any longer. We drove all the way down to a town past Lawton, Oklahoma, from Tulsa, to pick up this cat, took it upon ourselves to continue nursing this cat. It was a beautiful cat. We called it Buddy. It was frightened. We very rarely saw the cat. It would just hide all day. It was only till the last days that the cat finally started to warm up to us. And shortly thereafter, Buddy, who had feline leukemia, died. Now, you would have thought the world came to an end, and that's how much I cried. And, I want you to know that I'm not the unfeeling person. In fact, in our family, my wife, who's the sweetest gal in the world, I love her to death, she's a strong one. She's the one that says, okay, something happened, now let's get on, let's fix it. Me, I break down and cry. So I don't want you to think that I'm just an unfeeling person, don't care. The broadcast this morning is one, quite frankly, I do not want to conduct. The message this morning I do not want to give. I am compelled to do so. The news media has filled our brains with one side of the story, and it really annoys me. It annoys me because it's so typical of what we hear. Was the shooting a tragedy? Beyond tragedy. Let me be honest with you. If someone had come home and told me that one of my 3 sons, or more than one son, was killed during school hours while in elementary school, I don't know if I could have survived that news. Not that I would have cried, I would have grieved. I'm not certain I could have survived. I don't know what I would have done. I don't know how I would have lived after that. I understand that. I had a son that almost died. My number 2 son almost died. My wife would not let me go into the hospital room because he looked pale. He looked like he was dying. She said, I would prefer you don't go in. She knew I couldn't handle it. So I don't want to come across as if I'm insensitive. Oh, your kid got killed. The heck with it. So what? Go move on. Let me tell you something. I could not be as brave as those parents are, as strong as those parents are. If I get choked up thinking about it, and we should all feel that way, and hopefully we feel that way. And we should do absolutely everything that we can to protect our children. Absolutely everything. Saying that, Gun control is not one of them. Let me repeat myself. Gun control is not one of them. We have drug control. We have very strict gun control. We have spent billions since the war on drugs was initiated. And where are drugs plentiful? In our prison system. Just think about that. If I wanted to get drugs, and I've never taken any drugs, other than aspirin or whatever, or a prescription drug that my doctor gave me because I had an infection. That's it. But if I went out on the street, just willy-nilly, and just start asking around, I can find drugs in a nice town like Tulsa. And I can do that in any town. So much for drug control. We have the strictest gun control probably in the world. And we spent, obviously, the most money on control of drugs. And what do we have? We have a drug culture. What I am saying, folks, is that the instrument is not the problem. The gun is not the problem. The drug is not the problem. If it was the problem, none of us would be driving. How many people are maimed, injured, and killed every year in automobile accidents? I honestly don't know the number, but countless thousands. Does anyone know here how many? It's probably in the hundreds of thousands. It's a phenomenal number when you look at it. I'm not only killed, but maimed and seriously injured. Every day when I'm driving around, you hear a cop car going around, and you see an accident somewhere in a small town. Well, the obvious conclusion, if we want to follow the gun control logic, or the paradigm that television wants us to accept, the obvious answer to that, get rid of the cars. No more driving. And the only difference between that argument and the argument of guns is people say, but wait a minute, well, we know cars kill a lot of people. I mean, 1,000 times more people, or maybe 100,000 times more people than drugs, than guns, rather, is that we need the car. Well, now we have an argument. We have a discussion. How much do we need cars and how much do we need guns? You can't have that discussion. See, because the fact is, it is not the car, and it is not the gun, and it is not the drug. Let's look at the situation, step back for a minute, get all the emotion out of it. It's tough for me to get the emotion out of it. I'm sure it's difficult for you. And I want to reiterate, I am not insensitive to this. I am incredibly sensitive to it, and that's what angers me, or I would not bring the subject up. I do not want to see this happen again, and if we pursue the path that is so vocal today on our mass media, we will not solve this problem. Today in schools, we have alert systems. In the event someone notices a child acting strangely, he is watched. He is brought to counseling. His parents are brought to school because he's acting strange. And that usually leads to something bad, I guess. That's what they say. Now, here's a kid who was really strange, apparently. I don't know all the intricacies, but apparently he was a very strange kid. He was on medication. His mother had guns at home. I don't know if those guns that she acquired legally or illegally, I have no idea. But he didn't go out and buy guns. He stole the guns from someone else. How do you gun control that? Do you go to everyone's home and say, let me see your guns and see how they're locked up? You know that's impossible. And if it was possible, it still wouldn't work. We have to focus on really where all the failures are. The failures, in my opinion, is why didn't someone recognize that this kid had problems in the first place? And if they did, they gave him medicine. They gave him drugs. Was that the right prescription? Or maybe that was the easy prescription. Or that was the common prescription. Let's talk about that. Let's not talk about gun control. Now, apparently, and the little that I read about it, he shot down a door. He shot down a door, folks, with a 9mm. Now, I know a little bit about guns. I not only have guns, but I reload. I know something about ammunition. It is pretty tough if you have a steel school door, to break that open with a 9mm. He must have shot the heck out of that thing and been very, very lucky. During that time, did not anyone hear a gun go off and a door being mutilated? A steel door? You know the sound that makes? Just to give you an example, I was at a friend's house who has a farm, and I was carrying a 380. That's a small gun. And I said, let me see how this thing goes. And I forgot to put, like a jerk, and I have bad ears. I didn't put any hearing protection in. I just extended my arm out, by a pond that he had, and I laid off a couple of shots. I was stone deaf for a half hour. Now, you can imagine the sound ricocheting off a steel door. They could have heard that really, literally 3-4 blocks away, you could have heard that. Now, here's my point. Not too long ago, in fact, let's stop for a break. I need some coffee to calm myself down. Let's take a break and I'll continue. Folks, I really would love to hear from you because I sound like a lone wolfie here, and I just don't like that. It's 855-866-1170. Please call in with your opinion. And if you disagree, please call in. I'm not going to argue with anyone. I'm not going to hang up on anyone. I'm not going to call anyone an idiot like you hear on talk show programs. I want to make sure that we understand each other. That's the only way we're going to break through with the problems that we have today is when we start talking logically. Please, let's do that. 855-866-1170. Of course, you can send your email anytime to comments@libertytalkradio.com. I want to tell you a quick story and then relate it to the Newtown incident. I went to get a building permit to get a little shelter put in my garage, a storm shelter. Not a big deal. They drill a little hole and they put a thing in there. No big deal. I figured, well, it's about time we have one with all the crazy weather we have. And I went to buy one, and the guy says, you have to get a building permit. I said, no problem. I'll go down. They told me what to do. I went downtown. Well, I went downtown to the county or city of Tulsa building, whatever it was, and it's a beautiful structure, brand new. I walked in. There are armed guards in the hall. I walk in, and it's like I'm going to a jail. I go, I'm here to get a building permit. They took a photo ID, made a photo ID. All I had to do is go there, fill out a form, and give them $149, right? I had a photo ID that I had to wear. I had to, search for guns, the whole bit, right? I mean, it was as if I was walking into the Pentagon, right? And then they escorted me to the right place. And then the room that I went to, it was gigantic. It was like a whole floor of this building. There must have been 2 people there. Not 30 kids sitting in a classroom. 2 people there. You couldn't even find them behind some desk, obscure desk somewhere. And I thought to myself when I heard the shooting, this is the precautions that our government takes. Armed guards in the hall, photo ID, you name it. And yet, where were the armed guards protecting hundreds of our students, our children? If we needed an armed guard for the city or county of Tulsa, in a building that was relatively vacant, by the way, I went to 3 floors, relatively vacant. Only a few people were working this whole entire building, the floors that I've been on. What type of protection do you think we should have afforded a school with hundreds and possibly thousands of students, of children, who are totally vulnerable to the outside? Where was it? Did we have a guard? Where was the guard? If I shot a 9mm, it's a loud gun, let me tell you, and I shot it at a metal door, you can hear that a mile away. Where was he or she? Was, in fact, the guard an armed guard, or was it just one of these guys who walk around without guns and just tell kids, get back to class? You would think that after the first shot, regardless of where they were in the school complex, within, not minutes, within seconds, they would have arrived at that scene, and they would have come with guns blazing. Where were they? The system broke down, folks. It's not the guns. It's not the guns. It's the system broke down. We had a sick kid for a long period of time. He ignored him. Let's ignore him. What we can do, we can fix him really up. We can give him drugs. Now, if you think drugs is the answer, let me give you something that I just read just this morning. Do you know GMO has been found? GMO, stuff that we eat every day. We go to a Oriental food place. It's filled with GMO. They fed GMO to laboratory rats. They got tumors and cancer and died prematurely. They do not know what the effect on the brain is. Now, GMO, the money makers up there, they're making a fortune on GMO. Don't touch GMO, take away the guns. And GMO is genetically modified food. I'm sorry, I was just reminded. And they put that in our food, but, so people go nuts, crazy, they get tumors, they get cancer, and they die. Screw them. We're making a fortune on it, and we paid off the criminals in Congress to approve it. We're clean. We're legal. So we feed GMO to our children, right, that we know is harmful. Scientifically know it's harmful, but that doesn't come out. Now, I want to know, where were we when this fella was an Adam Lance, I think his name was. Where were his parents? Where was his community? Where was his school? Where was his doctor? Where was everyone who knew this kid? Where were his friends saying, this kid needs help? It doesn't take a scientist to realize someone really has some really deep problems. I have friends that have really deep problems, and we know it. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a physician or anything. Where were these people? Well, let's not talk about that because that's prevention. That's individual responsibility. You know what we'll do? We'll talk about guns. It's like saying, we have drunk drivers? Let's ban cars. It doesn't make... Folks, it doesn't lead. I read this morning an article. Where the heck is it? And it just hacked me off so much. It was a plea for gun control. And it said, we had enough. We had enough. Now this should be the impetus from which we have stricter gun control laws, whatever that's supposed to mean, and close the gun show loophole. The gun show. What the heck is that? I go to gun shows. I've never seen a loophole there. Never once. One thing I do find when I go there, everyone is extremely polite and no one's ever been shot. And the biggest gun show in the United States is right here in Tulsa, called the Wanamaker Gun Show. The biggest one in the United States. People from all over Canada, Mexico, all over the world come to this gun show. Not one person has ever been shot.
On purpose.
On purpose. I think one time a gun went off because someone had a gun. No one got, and the guy was looking at it and he shot the floor or something, I mean, all right, aside from that. So why don't we attack the problem? You know why we can't attack the problem? Because politically, it is not viable to do so. Because they know they can't, they know they won't, and they don't give a damn. But gun control serves many purposes. Not only do we feel as if, we're solving the problem, we empathize, we're for the citizens, but we're going to disarm the citizens and then we take control. Now, come on, folks. Believe me, if guns were the problem, I'd be the first one to say, here's all my guns. Take them. You know that. You know that instinctively that is correct. Call me, 855-866-1170. 855-866-1170. You know, I don't understand why we will not. We have, 310 million people in the United States. And granted, a bunch of people got killed. There were 11 instances, I think. Is that 11? 11 incidents of someone going out and killing people. 11.
In 2012.
In 2012. 11 shooting incidents, other than, drug lords killing each other. That happens every day. And that's good. They get rid of each other. It's a cleaning out, a cleansing process, as the mafia used to say. 11 incidents out of 310 million. What kind of odds are those? Is that 100 million to 1? Is that what it comes out to be? Or 10 million to 1? I mean, it's phenomenal. Anything that you would do with those odds would be safe. So I'm saying that whatever gun controls we have now in effect are working. They're working perfectly. 11 out of 110. And seven, listen to this, folks, 7 out of the 11 were classified as, the shooters were classified as being mentally ill, just like Adam Lance. Now, why don't we hear that on our mainstream media? Well, whether it be conservative or progressive, left, right, or what.
Blame the pharmacy.
Let's blame the pharmaceutical companies and close them down. Boy, it's easy to blame, but when we have to get in there and we have to get involved and we have to be responsible, ain't gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen, because I don't want to bother with it. I want to pay. I'll pay the government to get rid of it. And that in fact is the truth. This is where we start digging in, rather than. And I watched a few programs when they discuss this, and I couldn't really listen to it. The first thing they do is they get them. They go, it's about time we did something about these guns, and it's about time we got serious. We got serious about gun control. What the hell is that? What the hell is that supposed to mean? Serious about gun control? What the hell does that mean? You mean if we got serious about gun control, this kid who was mentally unstable would not have stole the guns from his mother and killed the kids? They would have done it anyway. He would have done it anyway. And then after we have the legislation, that serious legislation, to handle this, to make sure it never happens again, what do you think would happen? Then we're going to say, we're going to get really super serious now. And we get to the point where you couldn't own a gun if your life depended on it. And if you were caught even looking at a gun, you would get 10 years in jail. And let's take a break. Okay, we have a caller. Mark, you're on the air. What's on your mind this morning?
You're talking about the school shootings. Two things that could be done real quick, real easy, is have an armed officer at each door, as you were talking about at the courthouse earlier, and also on a voluntary basis, have teachers that would be willing to go through proper gun training, be able to carry a concealed weapon on campus.
I could not agree with you more. Mark, let me say something while you're on the air. They say inadequate gun control, is the problem. So we need more. We have gun control now, but we need more gun control. Actually, gun control is the problem, because students as well. Well, I don't know about the students, although I wouldn't object to that, but the teachers should all be allowed to carry a gun. What do you see when you walk into a school? What's the first sign you see? Guns not allowed. Now, what does that tell you? There's gun control. We have the signs up. We have spent millions of dollars in the United States putting up signs, guns, no guns allowed, right? And who are the only people who show up with guns? Are those people who want to do harm to others. Now, what kind of stupidity can we absorb and actually buy into that? What do you feel about that?
I agree. That's just like the Aurora, Colorado. The gentleman that did all the shooting up there, there was actually theaters closer to him, but that theater was posted no firearm.
Right. You could imagine, Mark, if in fact the teachers were allowed to carry guns, they knew how to use them in the whole bit. Now, assuming you didn't have crazy teachers shooting, again we go back, crazy teachers shooting the students, which you don't have. But you can imagine, maybe they would have broken in, maybe they would have gotten to the hall, because they would have heard that. Maybe they would have injured a couple of kids, or maybe injured someone, or maybe no one, but they would have been taken down immediately. Because just think, the number of teachers with guns and one person. In a gunfight, have a gun, but make sure you're never outgunned. You know the story, right?
Yeah.
This guy would have been outgunned. No kids would have been killed, So, and then we could have applauded no gun control, saved our kids' lives. All right, Mark, if you're calling early in the morning, why don't you give me a email to comments@libertytalkradio.com if you haven't so already, and with a T-shirt size and a mailing address, and I'll send you a Liberty Talk Radio T-shirt. How about that?
I got one other thing I'd like
Sure.
to mention. Right after your show is an infomercial. How
Yeah.
can we go about getting you to expand your show to 2 hours?
All right, 2 hours. Okay, we'll look at that. Okay, seriously.
And
If you want to do that, call. I guess you call.
Make it happen. Give us a holler. Tell us what we need to do, and I think we can support you.
I think they called 918-460. What is it? 640. I'm sorry. You got that? Call that number. 743-7814. Call them, tell them that this is the most wonderful program on KFAQ, and you demand 2 hours, and don't even be nice to them, okay? All right, Mark, thank you so much. Bye-bye now. Folks, gun control is the problem, not the solution. Doesn't that sound crazy? Because you haven't heard that. The only place you've heard that is on 1170 KFAQ Liberty Talk Radio. Because that's the only thing that makes sense. The most polite people in the world, I will find the most polite people in the world at gun shows. And it's almost comical. Sometimes I see these big burly guys, gigantic, 6'2", and they look like they look mean, and I'll inadvertently bump into them or something because it's kind of crowded. And you know what? They go, "Oh, excuse me, sir. I'm awfully sorry." And it's so uncharacteristic. Everyone's on their own behavior. Everyone. No one ever gets shot at a gun show. And let me talk about the gun show loophole. There is no loophole. You want to buy a gun at a gun show, what you do is you have to fill out the forms. However, if you want to buy a gun from somebody else, an individual, you can just swap. You give them, the $500, he gives you the gun. They call that a loophole. That's not a loophole, because if someone came to my house and said, "Hey, you got an extra 9mm I want to sell?" I said, "Oh, yeah." And I sold to him, I would do the same thing. That's not a loophole. In other words, what they want to do is they want to restrict my ability to buy or sell guns. My guns that I own. Not going to do that. So there's no loophole. Don't go for that loophole crap. You say, "What do you mean by that?" And most of them don't even know what that means, but they're repeating it. Now, all of this... Now, if you want to save lives, reduce any gun controls we have now. Make certain you take all these stupid signs off and put up there, "Guns allowed. Teachers are armed." All right? And they will shoot to kill. I can guarantee you this guy would not have gone there. Now, someone just made a point here in the studio. They said, let's assume we got rid of guns, and this guy's a nutcake, and he really wants to take these kids out. You know what he'll do? He won't shoot the kids. What he'll do is he'll set the building on fire. So what are you going to do? This guy, Gary, he's right here in the studio with me. He says, "Hey, how about we outlaw matches?" You see what I mean, folks? And the thing is, the government, although they go through this, the morning bit, they revel in this. They do, because this is another nail in the coffin of guns. And they get closer and closer and closer to totally restrict our ability to protect ourselves, not from foreign invasion. Forget about that stupidity of foreign invasion. Protect ourselves from an abusive government. Please understand that. Now, folks, 855-866-1170. Oh, do we have someone online?
He's on the line.
Okay. Right after we take this call. In fact, let's do this. Can we we take a quick break? Let's take a quick break. We have a caller. Caller, hold on. You know, folks, I want to remind you, please, take in consideration supporting the sponsors of this program. Our sponsors support liberty. They want freedom. They don't want anyone to get hurt or anything. They want your individual freedom. And those are the type of companies that advertise on this program. They support this program that, in fact, supports you and your freedom. Support our sponsors. And let's take this caller. Caller, you're on the air.
Yeah. I have an interesting short story to tell you.
Your name, please. Your name, please.
Jim. I'm in Ordway, Colorado.
Jim, we have a very bad connection. Could we clear that up a little bit?
Okay. I'm in Ordway, Colorado. My name is Jim. And I have a friend that became a teacher, and they wanted him to join the NEA, and because of his Second Amendment position, he didn't want to join the NEA. That's the biggest contributor to the Brady Fund, as you know.
Correct.
And he went to court over it, and they said he had to give to another charity, like the United Way. And you know how he combated that is in the Rifleman, there was a similar case that was brought out, and he gave it to the NRA through the United Way in the name of the NRA.
That's interesting.
And that, I'll tell you something, that got him out of full-time teaching and kind of blackballed him on the system.
Oh, yeah, right. That doesn't surprise me at all.
Well, Free and Peaceful People's Republic of California, you know what I mean? So, anyway.
Yeah. And by the way, Jim, where are you calling from?
Ordway, Colorado. I'm
okay, good.
60 miles east of Pueblo, out where guns, God, and guts means.
Okay, and you're getting the signal, right? You're on the radio, right? You're getting the signal on the radio, right?
Yeah, I'm getting you right on the AM radio,
yeah.
Little Grande.
Yeah, you're a good man. You're an hour behind us, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, you do me a favor. Tell all your friends out there about us and get them on the pipe also. Okay.
I'm going to do that. I can get you on my.
And do me a favor, Jim. Do me a favor. Send me an email to comments@libertytalkradio.com with a mailing address and a T-shirt size. I want you to be a walking billboard for Liberty Talk Radio there in Colorado. Okay.
I do not have a computer.
Okay. Send. All right. You can send me a letter to 8177 South Harvard. I'll give you the address. 8177 South Harvard. 77 South Harvard. Number 310 in Tulsa, Oklahoma. 74137. Okay.
Okay.
Tulsa, Oklahoma, 74137. Okay? Or yeah.
137. Thank you.
Right. Okay, thanks for calling.
Teachers out there keep passing that on because there's so many hunter teachers that have to pay that.
I agree.
Exorbitant dues.
All right, got to run.
Okay, God
Thank
bless.
you, Jim. Bye-bye.
Enjoy.
You know, let me tell you a couple of ingredients that are missing from this dialogue. Number one, the number of lives that are saved every year because people own a gun. How many women are coming home from work, it is dark, and there is someone who is trying to accost them, and they are unsuccessful because they have guns? You know, there are no statistics on that, but every article that I have read, they said, we don't know the number. We know it's in the thousands. Listen, in the thousands. And they said one company tried to do a survey, which is near as impossible, and they had a number like 11,000 lives were saved every year, or incidents where one or more lives were saved, 11,000. Now, if you took the guns away, we wouldn't have one shooting that we're talking about in Newtown. We would be talking about maybe 10,000 or more. But now the dialogue would be off the table because they got the gun control, and we don't want to talk about that. Just like we don't want to talk about guns and drugs. We don't want to talk about that. It's off the table because we're spending billions of dollars on gun control, and we don't want to give the impression as if that program is out of control, which it is. Now, all of that, all of what I have said, almost pales in comparison to the next couple of things that I'm going to bring up. And folks, let me hear from you. I want one more caller, 855-866-1170. Don't care what your persuasion is. 855-866-1170. Let me hear. I want one more caller, please. Okay, I can take one more caller. Is that our rights are eroded every year. We all know that. We all know that. This is not paranoia. Just look at what's going on. The NDAA, the Patriot Act, and all the ancillary acts that are passed that no one knows what's inside of them. But on each one of them, a certain amount of our liberties are eroded every year. Our ability to own a gun is one of the few vestiges of freedom that we have left. Let's not give it up. We have one more caller. Let's take him. Caller, you're on the air. Your first name, please.
This is Jim calling from Bixby, Oklahoma.
Jim, what you got?
Joe, I was taking the idea a little further from an earlier caller about having an armed guard and having teachers optionally being trained in concealed carry.
Right.
If you think about it, going back the last few years, the massacre, the rampage shootings that have happened in the last few years, the tragedy at, I think, the University of Virginia, the senator in Arizona, that outdoor shooting, the Batman killer in the movie theater, and now, of course, this tragedy in Connecticut. Think about this. If there was armed security at schools, if 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 responsible adults had concealed carry, all of these tragedies could have been circumvented or been have been less of a tragedy had there been armed citizenry in the presence to intervene and try to bring down the shooter. Had that scenario unfolded, even though we're dealing with mentally deranged people that plot these things, they normally, someone that's going to commit a crime does think about the risks and dangers involved. And if these rampage shooters were typically taken out by security guards and responsible concealed carry citizens, maybe these types of tragedies would cease or be far less frequent.
Jim, couldn't agree with you more. Thanks a lot for your comments, and thank you for listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Appreciate that. Thank you for your time. You know, folks, he's absolutely correct. Where do you think these crazy people go with guns? What do you think? Do you think they go to places where they know they get? No, they go to schools. They go to churches. They go to places like cafeterias where elderly go for their luncheon. That's what they go to. Safe places. You know, in a church, you don't find people with AK-47s on their back. They go there, they shoot up the place. You know why? Because they're punks. They know they're punks. That's why they have a gun and they're shooting. You've got to be the ultimate punk to kill a kid. Now, one other thing. Hold on. I don't understand what that means. Someone gave me a note. I have no idea what it means. Now, here is the one that grabs me more than anything else. It's entitled Consoler in Chief. The audacity of this man to be a consoler while at the same time authorizing drone strikes in remote areas of other countries that we are not at war with without the permission of that government to kill a suspected, not in a court of law, suspected Taliban or Al-Qaeda operative, takes out an entire neighborhood, which includes, folks, men, women, and children, and he walks around proud that our American soldiers are protecting our liberties. He hides behind our own men, young men, our kids. He hides behind the shield of our own kids that he took out of school, placed into the army, and taught them how to be killers. Think about that. You go into the Army to learn to kill. And he's a consoler in chief. And who are they killing? They're not defending. They're going overseas to kill. And how many come back mentally deranged because they know they killed innocent men, women, and children? Where is the consoler in chief then? How hypocritical can a person be? I really want you to think about that. Every time you hear, well, the drone attack, there was a drone attack on northern Pakistan. And they interviewed this elderly gentleman whose entire family was wiped out. And he said, they translated, and he says, I don't know what the United States is. I mean, forget about the war with it. He didn't know what the United States was. He didn't know if it was a car, a machine. He had no idea, never heard of the term. And here we are, killing people in his own family. Oh, yeah, because, people in northern Pakistan, we don't take them out. Let me tell you, you'll never be able to walk out of your house and throw out the garbage. You're going to get killed. And yet we are dumbed down to think that this is a good thing to do. And the audacity of this character to kill people every day, dozens of people every day, innocent people, and then to be consoler in chief, I think is abominable. And if there is a hell when you die, this guy's going to the deepest part of hell. And that's it. Thank you for listening to Liberty Talk Radio. I'm going for breakfast at Village Inn, 52nd and Yale. Come and join us. Folks, this is the end of tonight's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for their financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. Folks, you can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends. Let's hear from you. Comments at libertytalkradio.com. Until then, I'm Joe Cristiano. This is Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.